I practice thinking in English. Graded reader. Improve your English speaking. Speak English well. Part 1. Introduction and Stage 1. Think in verbs. Please don't forget to subscribe if you want to improve your English throughout stories. Learning to think in English is one of the most important steps to becoming fluent. When you can think in English, you no longer need to translate from your native language. This makes speaking faster, more natural, and more confident. However, many learners feel stuck because they're used to thinking in their native language and translating into English before they speak. This process can be slow and frustrating. It often leads to mistakes and makes you feel less confident. But there is good news. You can train your brain to think directly in English, and it is easier than you might think. With consistent practice and the right techniques, you can learn to skip the translation step and think like a fluent English speaker. Thinking in English begins with small changes in how you approach learning. It does not require long hours of study or advanced knowledge of grammar. Instead, it requires simple, daily habits that gradually train your brain. In this part, we will focus on the first stage of thinking in English, thinking in verbs. Verbs are the action words of a sentence, and they describe what is happening. By practicing how to identify and think about actions in English, you can start forming sentences in your mind more quickly and naturally. Why should you start with verbs? Actions are all around us, and they are a constant part of daily life. Wherever you go and whatever you do, there are always things happening. If you can think about these actions in English, you can begin training your brain to describe the world around you. This is an essential first step because it allows you to focus on what is happening in the moment without getting overwhelmed by grammar or vocabulary. Let us take an example to understand how this works. Imagine you are walking through a park. As you look around, you see people doing different activities. Some people are running, others are talking, and a dog is chasing a ball. You also notice someone feeding pigeons. These activities can all be described using verbs: run, talk, chase, and feed. By observing these actions and identifying the verbs in English, you are practicing how to think in English. This simple exercise helps your brain associate actions with English words instead of translating from your native language. You can practice thinking in verbs anywhere. For example, if you're waiting at a bus stop, look around and notice what people are doing. Someone might be reading a book, another person might be texting on their phone, and a child might be playing nearby. In your mind, describe these actions using English verbs: read, text, play. This practice can also be done indoors. For example, if you are in your kitchen, think about what you are doing. You might be cooking, cleaning, or washing dishes. By naming these actions in English, you are training your brain to think in the language. Even if you are not in a busy place, you can still practice thinking in verbs by using your imagination. Look at a picture or a photo and think about the actions happening in the scene. For example, imagine a picture of a family picnic. What are they doing? Perhaps they're eating, playing, or relaxing. By practicing with images, you can improve your ability to think about actions in English, even when you are not observing real-life events. Setting aside time each day to practice thinking in verbs is a powerful habit. You do not need a lot of time. Just 5 to 10 minutes a day can make a big difference. Pick a different location each day and focus on the actions happening around you. For example, one day you might practice while sitting in a cafe, and the next day you could practice while walking in a park. This variety keeps the practice interesting and helps you train your brain in different environments. Let's look at another example. Imagine you are standing on a busy street. People are walking quickly. A cyclist is riding a bicycle, and a group of friends is laughing. In your mind, you can describe these actions using the verbs walk, ride, and laugh. By focusing on the actions, you're not only learning new vocabulary, but also developing the habit of thinking directly in English. Practicing thinking in verbs helps you stay in the present moment. Instead of worrying about grammar or struggling to find the right words, you focus on what is happening right now. This makes the learning process more enjoyable and less stressful. Over time, you will notice that you can think about actions in English without much effort. Your brain will begin to automatically identify and describe actions in the language. If you want to challenge yourself, you can combine thinking in verbs with speaking practice. For example, as you observe actions, say the verbs out loud. If you see someone running, say, run. If you see someone reading, say, read. Speaking the verbs helps reinforce them in your memory and improves your pronunciation. You can also write the verbs down in a notebook to review later. This combination of thinking, speaking, and writing makes your practice even more effective. Another way to practice thinking in verbs is to describe your own actions throughout the day. For example, when you wake up, think, wake up. When you brush your teeth, think, brush. When you eat breakfast, think, eat. By doing this, you are creating a mental habit of describing your daily routine in English. This practice helps you build fluency because you are constantly reinforcing the connection between actions and English words. Thinking in verbs is also a great way to improve your ability to describe what you see in different situations. For example, if you're traveling, you can use verbs to describe the actions happening around you. Imagine you are at a busy market. You might see vendors selling fruits, customers bargaining, and children playing. In your mind, you can describe these actions using the verbs sell, bargain, and play. This type of practice helps you prepare for real-life conversations because you are practicing how to describe the world around you in English. In conclusion, thinking in verbs is a first stage of learning to think in English. By focusing on action words, you train your brain to describe what is happening around you. This practice helps you build a strong foundation for fluency and prepares you for the next stages of thinking in English. Remember, the key is to practice every day, even if it is just for a few minutes. Observe the actions around you, name them in English, and challenge yourself to think directly in the language. With time and consistency, you'll find that thinking in verbs becomes natural and you will feel more confident speaking English. Part 2. Stage 2. Think in nouns. After practicing thinking in verbs, the next step in learning to think in English is to focus on nouns. Nouns are the words that name people, places, things, and ideas. They are essential for describing the world around you. By practicing how to identify and think about nouns in English, you will build a stronger vocabulary and become more confident when speaking. This stage helps you add more details to your thoughts and prepares you to form sentences in the next stage. Why is it important to focus on nouns? Nouns are everywhere. Everything you see, touch, or think about has a name. By learning to name these objects and ideas in English, you take another step toward thinking in English naturally. For example, if you're sitting in a park, you might notice a tree, a bench, and a dog. These are all nouns that describe what you see. By identifying these nouns in English, you train your brain to recognize and name things without translating from your native language. Let's begin with an example. Imagine you are in a busy city like Sydney, Australia. You are standing by the famous Sydney Opera House. As you look around, you see the building, the harbor, and tourists taking photos. You also notice a boat in the water and a few seagulls flying above. All of these are nouns: building, harbor, tourists, boat, and seagulls. By naming these objects in English, you are practicing how to think about your surroundings directly in the language. You can practice thinking in nouns wherever you are. For example, if you are at a market, look around and identify the objects you see. You might notice fruits, vegetables, spices, and vendors. These are all nouns that describe the items and people around you. Even if you are just sitting in your room, you can practice identifying nouns. Look around and name the things you see. For example, you might notice a table, a chair, a book, and a laptop. By practicing in this way, you build your vocabulary and become more familiar with English words. Another way to practice is to describe what you're carrying with you. For example, think about the items in your bag. You might have a phone, some keys, and a wallet. These are all nouns that you can name in English. Practicing this daily helps you get used to naming objects and makes it easier to recall words when you need them. Over time, this practice will help you think faster and more clearly in English. If you're traveling or visiting a new place, use the opportunity to practice thinking in nouns. For example, imagine you are visiting Barcelona, Spain. Look around and name the things you see in English. You might notice buildings, bicycles, cafes, and tourists. By describing your surroundings, you are training your brain to think in English. This practice also helps you prepare for conversations because you are learning how to describe the world around you. Practicing with pictures is another effective way to think in nouns. Find a photo from a magazine, website, or your own photo album. Look at the picture closely and describe everything you see in English. For example, if you're looking at a picture of a beach, you might say, "The sand is white, the water is blue, and there are people swimming." By naming the nouns in the photo, you are practicing how to identify and describe objects in English. A fun activity is to challenge yourself to name as many nouns as possible in a specific location. For example, if you're sitting in a cafe, look around and name everything you see: table, chair, menu, coffee cup, and people. Try to do this every day in different places, such as at home, in the office, or on the street. The more you practice, the more natural it will become to think about nouns in English. Describing what you see in your daily life is another great way to practice. For example, if you're walking through a park, think about the nouns around you: trees, flowers, birds, and benches. If you're on a bus, look around and name the objects you see: seats, windows, bags, and passengers. By doing this regularly, you will build a strong habit of thinking in English. It is also helpful to write down the nouns you learn each day. Keep a notebook and write the names of objects, people, and places that you see or think about. For example, if you visit a supermarket, write down the nouns of the items you see: apples, bread, milk, and trolley. Reviewing your notes later will reinforce your memory and help you remember the words. Thinking in nouns is not just about naming objects. It also helps you describe people and their roles. For example, if you are at a school, you might see a teacher, a student, and a principal. If you are at a hospital, you might notice a doctor, a nurse, and a patient. By practicing how to name people and their roles in English, you will feel more confident describing different situations. To make this practice more enjoyable, combine it with other activities. For example, if you enjoy drawing, create a picture of a scene and label the nouns in English. If you like photography, take pictures of your surroundings and write down the names of the objects in the photos. These creative activities make learning more fun and help you remember the nouns more effectively. A great way to challenge yourself is to describe what you see while traveling. For example, imagine you are at a market in Istanbul, Turkey. Look around and name the objects you see: spices, rugs, lanterns, and tourists. This practice helps you focus on your environment and trains your brain to describe things in English. Over time, this habit will become automatic, and you'll find it easier to think in English. Key practice tip: spend a few minutes each day naming the objects around you in English. Whether you're outside, at home, or traveling, challenge yourself to identify everything you see. For example, if you're in a park, name the trees, benches, flowers, and animals. If you are in your kitchen, name the utensils, appliances, and food items. The more you practice this, the more your brain will automatically think in English. In conclusion, thinking in nouns is an essential stage of learning to think in English. By naming the people, places, and things around you, you build a strong vocabulary and develop the ability to describe your surroundings. This practice prepares you for the next stage of thinking in sentences. Remember, practice every day. Observe your environment and challenge yourself to name as many nouns as possible. With time and consistency, you will find it easier to think in English and feel more confident when speaking. Part 3. Stage 3. Think in sentences. Once you have practiced thinking in verbs and nouns, the next step is to combine them and think in sentences. This is where you start forming complete thoughts in English, which is an important step toward fluency. Thinking in sentences allows you to describe the world around you in more detail and prepares you for real-life conversations. It helps you express your ideas clearly and confidently without stopping to translate every word in your head. When you begin thinking in sentences, it is important to keep things simple. Do not worry about making long or complex sentences at first. Start with short, clear sentences that describe what you see or experience. For example, if you're sitting in a park, you might think the dog is running, the children are playing, or the sun is shining. These sentences are simple, but they help you practice forming complete thoughts in English. Let's take an example to understand this better. Imagine you are in Cape Town, South Africa, looking at Table Mountain. You see tourists climbing the mountain, the sun shining and the wind blowing. You can describe the scene in short sentences. The tourists are climbing the mountain, the sun is shining, and the wind is blowing. These sentences use both verbs, climbing, shining, blowing, and nouns, tourists, mountain, sun, wind. By combining verbs and nouns, you're practicing how to form meaningful sentences in English. As you become more comfortable with simple sentences, you can start adding more details. For example, if you're in a cafe, you might describe the scene like this. The waiter is serving coffee. Two friends are chatting at the next table, and a couple is reading the menu. These sentences are still simple, but they give a clearer picture of what is happening. Adding details helps you practice using more vocabulary and makes your descriptions more vivid. Another example is sitting in a park in Toronto, Canada. You notice a family having a picnic, children playing with a ball, and birds flying in the sky. You could describe the scene in sentences like, a family is having a picnic, the children are playing with a ball, and the birds are flying in the sky. These short sentences help you practice forming complete thoughts and expressing what you see. One way to practice thinking in sentences is to set aside 10 to 15 minutes each day to describe your surroundings. Wherever you are, look around and form sentences in your mind that describe what is happening. For example, if you're in an office, you might think, the phone is ringing, my colleague is typing on the computer, or the manager is talking to a client. By doing this regularly, you train your brain to think in sentences and prepare for real-life communication. If you want to challenge yourself, try describing scenes in more detail. For example, imagine you are in Berlin, Germany, walking near the Brandenburg Gate. Instead of just saying, the tourists are taking pictures, you can add more information. A group of tourists is taking pictures of the monument. Some of them are listening to their tour guide, and others are checking their maps. These longer sentences help you practice combining multiple verbs and nouns, which improves your fluency. Practicing with pictures is another effective way to think in sentences. Find a photo of a busy street, a market, or a natural landscape. Look at the picture and describe it in sentences. For example, if you're looking at a picture of a beach, you might say, the sand is white, the water is blue, people are swimming in the ocean, and children are building sandcastles. By describing the photo in detail, you practice thinking in complete sentences and using a variety of vocabulary. When you practice thinking in sentences, do not worry about making mistakes. It is more important to practice forming complete thoughts than to focus on perfect grammar. If you make a mistake, you can correct it later. The goal is to get used to thinking in English and expressing your ideas clearly. Over time, your sentences will become more accurate and natural. Another way to practice is to describe events from your day. At the end of the day, think about what you did and form sentences to describe your activities. For example, you might say, in the morning, I went for a walk in the park. I had breakfast at a small cafe. Or, I worked on a project with my team. This type of practice helps you think in sentences and recall vocabulary related to daily life. To make your practice more engaging, try imagining yourself in different scenarios. For example, pretend you are at an airport. Think about what is happening around you and form sentences like, the passengers are waiting at the gate, the flight attendants are boarding the plane, and the pilot is preparing for takeoff. By imagining different situations, you can practice using a variety of vocabulary and sentence structures. A helpful tip is to combine speaking practice with thinking in sentences. As you form sentences in your mind, say them out loud. For example, if you're walking through a park, think, "The flowers are blooming," and then say it aloud. Speaking helps reinforce the connection between your thoughts and the words you use. It also improves your pronunciation and confidence when speaking English. You can also practice writing sentences to reinforce what you learn. Keep a notebook and write down sentences that describe your surroundings, activities, or thoughts. For example, if you're in a library, you might write, "The students are reading books," "The librarian is organizing shelves," and "A man is using computer." Writing sentences helps you organize your thoughts and practice using verbs and nouns together. To challenge yourself further, try describing complex scenes or events. For example, imagine you are at a festival. You might say, "The band is playing music, the crowd is cheering loudly, and the food stalls are serving delicious snacks." By describing the scene in more detail, you practice using a wider range of vocabulary and creating longer sentences. In conclusion, thinking in sentences is a key stage in learning to think in English. It allows you to describe the world around you, express your ideas clearly, and prepare for real-life conversations. Start with simple sentences and gradually add more details as you become more comfortable. Practice regularly by describing your surroundings, imagining different scenarios, and recalling events from your day. Do not worry about making mistakes. Focus on forming complete thoughts in English. With time and consistent practice, you'll find it easier to think in sentences and feel more confident when speaking. Part 4. Stage 4. Think in paragraphs and practical applications. Once you are comfortable thinking in sentences, the final step is to think in paragraphs. Thinking in paragraphs allows you to describe scenes, events, or ideas in more detail. This stage is essential because it helps you organize your thoughts, express yourself clearly, and communicate more fluently in English. When you can think in paragraphs, you are ready to engage in longer conversations, give detailed explanations, and tell stories in English. Thinking in paragraphs means creating a mental picture or story that includes multiple sentences. It combines verbs, nouns, and descriptive language to provide a fuller description of what you are experiencing or imagining. For example, instead of saying, "The waiter is serving coffee," you can expand it into a paragraph. "I am sitting at a small cafe by the window. The waiter is serving coffee to the customers. Two friends are chatting at the next table, and a couple is reading the menu. The atmosphere is warm and relaxing, with soft music playing in the background." By adding more details, you create a vivid picture that helps you think and speak more fluently. To practice thinking in paragraphs, start with a simple scene and describe it in detail. For example, imagine you are visiting the Great Wall of China. You can describe the scene like this: "I am standing on the Great Wall, and the view is breathtaking. The mountains stretch out as far as I can see, and the wall winds its way across the landscape. Tourists are taking photos and walking along the ancient stone path. I can hear people speaking in different languages, and a cool breeze is blowing through the air. The steps are steep, and the stones feel worn from centuries of use." This paragraph combines verbs standing, stretching, walking, speaking, blowing, nouns, wall, view, mountains, tourists, steps, stones, and descriptive language to create a detailed image. Another example is describing a market in Istanbul, Turkey. You might say, "The market is lively and full of activity. Vendors are selling spices, fruits, and colorful rugs. The air smells of fresh bread and roasted coffee. Tourists are taking photos, while locals are bargaining with the sellers. A man is pouring tea from a tall silver pot, and children are laughing as they run through the narrow aisles. The sound of people talking and the clinking of coins fills the air, creating an energetic and vibrant atmosphere." This practice helps you develop the ability to think and speak about complex scenes naturally. One way to practice thinking in paragraphs is to describe your day in detail. Start from the moment you wake up and think about everything you did. For example, today was a busy day. I woke up early and went for a walk in the park. The weather was sunny, and I saw many people exercising. After that, I had breakfast at a small cafe. I ordered a cappuccino and a croissant. Later, I went to work and had a meeting with my team. We discussed our new project, and everyone shared great ideas. In the evening, I met a friend for dinner at a restaurant. We had a delicious meal and talked about our plans for the weekend. By describing your day in a paragraph, you practice organizing your thoughts and recalling vocabulary related to daily activities. Another effective exercise is to use pictures or photos as prompts for creating paragraphs. Choose a picture of a busy street, a natural landscape, or an event, and describe it in detail. For example, if you're looking at a picture of a beach, you might say, "The beach is beautiful and peaceful. The sand is soft and white, and the water is crystal clear. A few people are swimming in the ocean, while others are relaxing on the shore. Children are building sandcastles, and a man is flying a colorful kite. In the distance, I can see a boat sailing on the horizon. The sound of waves crashing and the gentle breeze make the atmosphere calm and refreshing." This exercise helps you practice thinking in paragraphs and using descriptive language. When you practice thinking in paragraphs, focus on creating a logical flow of ideas. Start by describing the main scene, then add details about the people, actions, and atmosphere. For example, if you're sitting in a park, begin by describing the setting. "I am sitting on a bench in the park." Then, describe what is happening. Children are playing on the swings, a man is walking his dog, and a group of friends is having a picnic. Finally, add details about the atmosphere. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, and the air smells of freshly cut grass. This structure helps you create a complete and organized paragraph. Thinking in paragraphs also helps you prepare for real-life conversations. For example, if someone asks you about your favorite vacation, you can respond with a detailed answer. "My favorite vacation was when I visited Paris. I stayed near the Eiffel Tower, and every morning I walked to a nearby cafe for breakfast. I explored famous landmarks like the Louvre Museum and Notre Dame Cathedral. In the evenings, I enjoyed delicious French food at small restaurants. The city was full of life, with street musicians playing and people chatting at outdoor cafes. It was a wonderful experience, and I hope to visit again someday." Practicing this skill allows you to speak more confidently and express your ideas clearly. To make thinking in paragraphs more enjoyable, try using creative activities. For example, write a short story about an imaginary trip or describe a scene from your favorite movie. If you enjoy drawing, create a picture and write a paragraph describing it. These activities make learning fun and help you practice organizing your thoughts in English. Recording yourself is another helpful way to practice thinking in paragraphs. Choose a topic, such as my favorite place or a memorable day, and record yourself describing it in detail. Listen to the recording and pay attention to how you organize your ideas and use vocabulary. Over time, you will notice improvements in your ability to think and speak in paragraphs. A useful tip for this stage is to connect your sentences with linking words and phrases. For example, use words like "and," "but," "because," and "so" to create smoother transitions between ideas. Instead of saying, "The market is lively, vendors are selling spices," you can say, "The market is lively and vendors are selling spices." Linking your sentences helps your paragraphs flow more naturally and improves your fluency. In conclusion, thinking in paragraphs is the final stage of learning to think in English. It allows you to describe scenes, events, and ideas in more detail, helping you communicate more fluently and confidently. Practice this skill by describing your day, using pictures as prompts, and writing or speaking about different topics. Focus on creating a logical flow of ideas and using descriptive language to make your paragraphs more vivid. With regular practice, you'll find it easier to think and speak in English, and you will be well on your way to fluency.